Hello everybody and welcome to an extremely dusty dirt road a little ways southwest of Wickenburg. We are just west of Purple Mine Road near the Belmont Mountains. And as you can see, we are back on the ATVs today for another ride. Admittedly, it has been far too long since we've taken them out, so I am definitely looking forward to getting them out today. The plan for today is to head west, through the same area I took my Jeep through late last year. If you've seen our Harquahala Valley Purple Pansy camping video, the scenery may look a bit familiar. But since we'll be on the ATVs, we'll also be checking out a few side trails that I couldn't get to on that trip. Most notably, we'll be trying to get to an abandoned microwave site on the edge of the Hummingbird Springs wilderness. With mild temperatures, it should be a great day for a ride. The first few miles of our ride today would be on an extremely wide and fast-moving dirt road. The thick dust is from the heavy truck traffic that hauls rocks out from a nearby quarry. With the ATVs fired up and loaded down, we set out west on the trail. The terrain was flat and monotonous as we traversed the wide Hassayampa Plain. We cruised at around 40 miles an hour as the miles ticked by. Eventually, the road wound through some small hills and wash bottoms. After 10 miles, we passed the remains of the lead dike mine off on the left as we continued on the trail. Not long after, we split off the main road, staying right onto a BLM road. This road was far less traveled and would be more fun to ride than the last dozen or so miles. The desert vegetation along this section was surprisingly green. While the ground had dried up, the rain from a recent tropical storm that passed through Arizona left all of the ocotillo and desert grass flourishing with life. Definitely not something you see every day here in the desert. Now on BLM Road 9108C, the road twisted and turned through the desert. While a little bit slower paced than earlier, this section was great to ride. We eventually passed by an old corral and windmill before continuing west through a dry wash crossing towards a set of rocky hills. Just a few miles later, we arrived at a remote trail junction. On my last trip, I stayed right here to get to the Purple Pansy Mine, but this time I wanted to stay left to check out something new. About 4 miles south from this point is the old Aguila Microwave site, so I wanted to head down the road and see what was left. The road was slightly rougher in spots, but still pretty easy. A few of the wash crossings had been paved back when the road was built in order to control the erosion. Those sections have since been torn up and washed out in a few spots, but it was still pretty easy to navigate. The views improved along this section as the trail climbed to the south. The road was rockier and rougher in places as it paralleled the border of the Hummingbird Springs wilderness area. After some up and down sections, the trail climbed sharply and arrived at a large flat spot at the top of the hill. The road dead-ended here. And what used to be here was a large tower and support building known as the Aguila Microwave Repeater Site. When looking at old satellite imagery from this area, you can see that this facility stood atop the hill from at least the 1980s up until 2018. It was removed sometime between April and November of 2018. It is unclear who operated the facility or what exactly it was used for, but based on its location here, it either relayed communications for the CAP to the top of Harquahala Mountain, not far to the northwest, or it was used for some other communications and connected with the site near Hoveder Road, just south of I-10. Based on the distance between here and there and the direction the antennas were facing, that's probably a pretty good bet, although it's impossible to be sure nowadays. Either way, the facility was defunct for the last few years and then removed and possibly relocated very recently. All that remains today is a large flat area, a great view, and possibly a cool place to camp at some point in the future. The view from up here was really something. While not a super high mountain peak, this hill here still offered a commanding view of the surrounding terrain. Looking southwest was a tremendous view of Bighorn Peak in the Bighorn Mountains. Sugarloaf Mountain was just visible to the east. After walking around the area, there really wasn't much left. A small survey marker and a few nuts and bolts, possibly from the equipment that was once up here, were found nearby. The only other structures that remain is a fence line and a small antenna mounted onto a pole. That's it. After enjoying the view and the weather for a little while, we headed back down the spur trail. The drive down was quick and fun. After returning the 4 miles to the junction, we proceeded north towards the Purple Pansy. It was still early enough in the day, and I wanted to make a quick stop at the mine to show my dad. We proceeded on the bumpy trail as it went around a large, rocky hill. Eventually, we turned off the main trail again and headed south to the mine site. We arrived at the Purple Pansy shortly after. The ruins here remain unchanged from my last visit nearly a year back. The only obvious difference is the removal of a random trailer that was parked here last time. The mine shafts and adits are still in pretty rough shape. The Purple Pansy, which began life as the pump mine, began production in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. It was worked for gold and copper before switching to a larger scale operation in the 1950s. Manganese, which is a metallic mineral used in different alloys, was then pulled out and sent to Ambrosia Mill nearby for further refinement before the whole operation was shut down by 1970. The site contains numerous foundations, adits, and an old tool shed or some kind of shop building. It was neat to visit the Purple Pansy again, even if only for a short time. By this point, the sun was now beating down on us and it was time to get rolling back to the trailer. We had about 20 miles to cover, retracing our route back to Vulture Mine Road. The trip back was uneventful. A little over an hour later, we were loading up the ATVs and getting ready to head back home. We had covered around 45 miles for the day. While not an overly huge or long trip, it was just great to get back on the ATVs, see some cool things, and spend some time in the desert. Thanks for tagging along on today's adventure. I look forward to sharing more ATV rides, Jeep trips, and longer specials, so stay tuned to our channel for all of that. And we'll see you on the next one.